So that was my cue. Um, Hi, everybody. Morning. Great to see you. um, in fact, so now I'm spotlighted, and if if you don't want to just look at a screen that has my face on it really big, you can change your view to gallery view. Oh yeah, so my name is Kurt Steinmetz. Many of you know me. Many of you here only know me virtually, although many of you I've met in person as well. So this morning I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, I'm going to talk some about the Kanzeon chant. And so if you don't know the Kanzeon chant, it's very, very short. And it goes, Enmei Jukku Kannon Gyo, Kanzeon, Namu Butsu, Yo Butsu Uen, Yo Butsu Uen, Bupo So En, Jo Rakku Ga Jo Chonen, Kanzeon Bonen, Kanzeon, Nennen Jushinki, Nennen Furishin. So, yeah, so it's obviously that's not in English, but when it's kind of spelled out phonetically, it's pretty easy to chant. In fact, it's quite easy to chant. And one of the things that I really like about that chant, in addition to the fact that it's easy, is that it has some very nice, well, okay, so it's easy and it sounds good too. It's pretty easy for a group of people to do that chant in a way that actually sounds really nice. And when doing any kind of, so like when you're doing sitting meditation, you do your best, right? That's what we're all doing here today. We're all trying to be silent. We're all trying to be still. We're all trying to not look around, and we're all doing our best. And doing your best is an acknowledgement of the teaching to do your best. Is an acknowledgement that our practice is always imperfect, but we should do it anyway. And you should do it anyway, but you should still be doing your best. So there is a one could even say there's a desire to do our practice well, that we have that goal, without kidding ourselves about how we're, about the imperfections of our practice. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because it's when we sit straight, when our spine is straight, when we are really still, that is when we're, following the basic instructions of meditation well. That's good. It's definitely possible. It takes some effort, but it's a good thing. And when we chant and it sounds nice, that's also good. But regardless of how it sounds, we chant anyway. And regardless of how straight we're able to keep our spine and how still we're able to remain, we sit anyway. Still making the effort, never, just accepting, persisting despite the deficiencies of our practice, but never letting those deficiencies be an obstacle, but always working on them. So, So when chanting sounds nice, it's wonderful. Um, but in addition to the fact that it's easy to do and that it actually sounds very nice, it's a beautiful rhythm. It's poetry, um, and so it's poetry. So that even if you don't know what the words mean, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what the words mean, but the sound and the rhythm is quite beautiful. Um, but in addition to it being easy and it sounding nice, it also has some really nice, good teaching in it. Um, when we say Kanzeon, it starts with the name of Kanzeon. So this kind of chanting is a form is a uh, one way of doing chanting. Traditionally, is just to repeat over and over again the name of a Buddha or Bodhisattva. Um, this particular chant is a little more elaborate than that, but it does have the name of the Bodhisattva Kanzeon, who in has many different names, uh, including Kwanseum Bosal, or Kwanum, or Kwanyin, or Kwanchian, or Avalokiteshvara, or Kannon. But in this chant, we say Kanzeon, and that's how it starts, Kanzeon. And then we say Namu Butsu, which means, homage to the Buddha. Namu Butsu. See, Kanzeon Namu Butsu. Kanzeon Butsu. Yo Butsu U In. Yo Butsu U In. I think that first one is in. But anyway, those next two lines are saying that I have affinity with, or I have, well, with Buddha, I have a cause. So this is one of the things that's kind of interesting in this chant, is that it talks about causes and conditions. And that's stated right at the beginning of the chant after stating the name of the Bodhisattva, Kanzeon, the Bodhisattva of compassion. Um, and actually, if you read anything about Buddhism, if you study any Buddhist teachings, you'll find that Buddhism makes a big deal about causes and conditions. And you have to have both. So the main cause of, so if you're chanting something that has something to do with Kwanseum Bosal or Kanzeon, she is identified with compassion. So all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are, of course, beings of great compassion. But because there are so many different Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and they often have kind of their own specialties. So there's a medicine Buddha. There's a Bodhisattva that people pray to when someone has died. There's lots of different job descriptions, and so it's good to have one Bodhisattva whose only job description is compassion, which underlies and is assumed by all the other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas as well. But it's good that there is one that's it, compassion. And so since the Kanzeon chant is a chant dedicated to the Bodhisattva of compassion, then one way of understanding that chant is that it's a chance for us to work on compassion. So how do you become compassionate? And so it's kind of a tricky question in Buddhism, because the teaching is that we all have Buddha nature. And the essence of Buddha nature is compassion. So we're done, right? We have Buddha nature. We have compassion. But if we look around, if we look at our own life, if we look at the world that we live in, we're not done. Having Buddha nature isn't enough. Having Buddha nature is like buying a packet of seeds. I actually have some around here, but I'm not going to get them. I have some seeds here in this room because I'm growing some nasturtium. I think that's how it's pronounced. Nasturtium flowers in my window sill. Even though it's winter, I have a nice sunny window here, and the nasturtiums are growing. They haven't started flowering yet, but before I planted them, before I put them into soil and gave them water and put them in a sunny spot, they were sitting in a packet, a seed packet, doing nothing. The potential was there. The Buddha nature was there. The cause was there, but the conditions weren't yet right. So the conditions, if you have a seed and you want it to grow, it takes work. And, sometimes, well, so I actually planted 3 different kinds of seeds in 2 different little planters and set them in my windowsill and watered them. And, well, that's, what, yeah, once they're planted and they're, in a sunny spot, well, in addition to watering them, I also put a little extra, not extra, but I put a little hydrogen peroxide in the water. If you have experience with growing plants from seeds, you know that often the seeds like a lot of water. But another thing that likes a lot of water is mold, fungus, and seedlings don't do well if there's a lot of fungus growing. That's how you get root rot. And of the 3 different kinds of seeds that I planted in 2 different planters, only one of the varieties grew in one of the planters. And so I can relate to that in terms of my own practice. I make an effort. I try different things, and you kind of have to go with what works. You try to create you try to create the conditions. I don't know. When I first started trying to grow things from seeds, which is a relatively new thing for me over the last several years. I was first impressed by how easy it was. The success rate was pretty high. But then I ran into this problem of, mold growing, mold also really liking the conditions that I was creating for my seedlings. And then I learned how to deal with that. Yeah. So you learn as you go along, and this is all good. If all there was Buddha nature, you have to have the Buddha nature. It has to start with the seed. But then we have to do the work. If there was no work for us to do, then we would be stuck where we are, with what we have, with ourselves as we are right now, with the world that we live in as it is now, without anything that can be changed or improved. So the idea of changing things or improving things or getting something uh, is it's a little tricky in Buddhism, especially in Zen Buddhism, um, because the mind that wants to improve is not always our friend. The mind that wants to get is not always our friend. Uh, the mind that wants to fix, there a lot of problems can come along with that. But the mind that doesn't want to improve is really no better than the mind that doesn't want to, or the mind that doesn't want to improve is no better than the mind that wants to improve. It isn't that there's something uh, wrong with making effort. You know, if you just practice mindfulness meditation, not to pick on mindfulness, you know, mindfulness has become uh, uh, a big deal. But if you practice mindfulness, it has benefits. And the benefits include things like, well, generally speaking, mindfulness can make you more capable, more competent, better able to focus on what you're doing, better able to use whatever potential or abilities you have. Um, but if you become more competent, if you become more focused, if you become more mindful, then what do you use those abilities for? You know, mindfulness can be used to make us better workers, better, more productive. Um, when my first experience with any kind of formal meditation teaching instruction, I studied, I learned transcendental meditation when I was still in high school, and some of the people who were in the group that I was learning transcendental meditation with were they were part of some program at their job where they'd been sent there to uh, help them with. I think at least one of them had, anyway. I mean, but they've basically been sent there to make them better workers, literally. Um, but if you become a better worker, what are you making? Are you making something good? Uh, I once had a job that I really liked. I was a I was a welder, heliarc welder, and I was making aluminum oil coolers for M1 tanks, and which is, you know, not a well, which is at the very least a somewhat ethically ambiguous way of making a living. I didn't decide that what we were going to make was tanks. Nobody asked me what we were going to make. Um, and I wanted that job. I was glad to have it. Um, for whatever reason, I always think of when I think of mindfulness and becoming very becoming very mindful and getting the benefits of mindfulness. One of the things I inevitably comes to mind is ninja assassins. So ninja assassins have they're very mindful. They have very great powers of concentration. They are very competent, um, and that makes them better assassins. Yeah, and so the direction of our practice is extremely important, uh, which is why in the Kanzeon chant, the first thing we say is Kanzeon. uh, and then the next thing we say is homage to the Buddha. And that establishes the direction from the beginning. So that what we're trying to get better at, what we're trying to improve, um, is something good. Um, and yeah. So it's Kanzeon Namu Butsu Yo Butsu En Yo Butsu En. That's saying, with Buddha, I have a cause, which is Buddha nature. With Buddha, I have a condition, or I have extra stuff. I have work to do, basically. With Buddha, I have work to do. I have the seed, I have Buddha nature, but I'm not just going to leave my Buddha nature in the seed packet. I'm going to get my Buddha nature out. I'm going to put it in the right kind of soil. I'm going to put it in a place where it's warm and gets sunlight, and I'm going to take care of it. And I'm going to keep at it. If it doesn't work, I'm going to keep at it. And I'm not going to just keep trying the same things over and over again. I'm going to pay attention to what's happening. I'm going to, it's a really good idea if you're trying to grow things, is to find other people who have succeeded in growing things themselves in the past and ask them, how did you do that? Which is one of the reasons why, we chant Kanzeon, or why we come to a online retreat. Uh, People who have tried to do whatever it is that we're trying to do here in the past, they've tried different things. They've found some things that work, and they've passed that along. Just as people who have grown things from seeds and have, encountered problems with mold growing in their seedlings, have figured out that if you add, and this is another thing with the hydrogen peroxide, you have to get the proportions just right. Too much hydrogen peroxide is not good. You have to get just the right amount. You have to get you don't have to get just exactly the right amount. You don't want to have too much. You don't want to have too little. You don't want to make yourself crazy trying to measure it, with some sort of, incredible. Um, it's not rocket science. It's just growing seeds. You do your best without making yourself crazy. And so doing the Kanzeon chant is a is something that we can do, just as getting up in the morning or in the evening for those from Australia or other places where it's evening, joining a retreat online. It's something that's possible. It's something that we can actually do. Um, in fact, it's very possible. It's fairly easy, um, but it definitely requires effort and commitment. Um, yeah. Kanzeon, Namu Butsu, Yo Butsu En, Yo Butsu En, Bupo So En, Jo Rakku Ga Jo Chonen, Kanzeon Bonen, Kanzeon Nennen Jushinki, Nennen Fudishin. So the last two lines are also very interesting. Nennen Jushinki, Nennen Fudishin. The word nen, actually the word nen means mindfulness. So the Kanzeon chant is a mindfulness chant, but it's a mindfulness chant that has embedded in it very solidly, very clearly, the direction of compassion. It's not just mindfulness for the sake of mindfulness, it's mindfulness for the sake of cultivating the qualities of Kanzeon, of increasing our affinity with Kanzeon. Um, by having Buddha nature, we already have within us an affinity with the Bodhisattva of compassion. Uh, but we can't let the seeds just stay in the seed packet. We have to do the work. And part of doing the work is one way, all right? There's lots of, you'll find different people have all kinds of, if you get into any kind of gardening or growing things, uh, uh, in addition to finding lots of helpful advice and guidance, you also find lots of people with lots of different ideas about what you should do or shouldn't do. So Kanzeon is a wonderful chant. I love the chant Kanzeon. Um, I'm really grateful to my teacher, Zen Master Degak, for introducing that chant into our practice. It didn't used to be part of what we did. Um, uh, yeah, and I think it's a good thing to try. Uh, Maybe I don't know. I don't I don't want to commit myself to this, but maybe Kanzeon is kind of like hydrogen peroxide. I don't know if that's it shouldn't be limited to just that, but it's kind of like hydrogen peroxide in that it's one of the things that we can do. Um, Chanting the Kanzeon chant um, is uh, yeah, part of the work, and everybody has to find their own way of working in their garden. It's good to find advice from other people, um, but don't let anybody else tell you how to work in your garden. Take all the advice, all the help, all the guidance that you can get, but figure it out for yourself. That would be my advice. And I think that with that, yeah, it's about time for me to wrap this up. So thank you for being here together with me, helping me in my practice, encouraging me to get up, um, and for the encouragement that we give to each other. It's wonderful, and it's great to see so many people that I recognize. It's great to see some new faces I don't recognize, and uh, I look forward to practicing with many of you for the rest of the day. For those of you who maybe I won't get a chance to see you again later, but thank you for being here right now at this time, and thank you for listening.